Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Derek and Jeff Petersen from Syntax US here to talk about RME tech support, questions, issues that you might be having. If you have questions, we hopefully have answers. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing great. How are you doing today, Derek?
Doing good. And if you're on any of our social media platforms watching this, clearly you are, if you heard me say that, you can ask or type a question in and we will try to answer it while we're on the air. So please don't be shy. Otherwise, Jeff and I just sit here and try to think of things to talk about. Um,
Yeah, we do. There's
so
plenty to
I,
talk about.
I'm holding a guitar today because I've been getting some software plug-in questions about S gear and using it with the RME stuff. I have a Babyface, so we'll get into that in a little bit,
Oh
in
man,
case
I
you're
love that
wondering.
S gear.
So Jeff, what kinds of questions you getting these days? Let me guess. I have a new Mac and I
Oh,
can't get it to install.
that's yeah, pretty much half of every day is the new M1 Max. And not only that, I mean there's, hurdles with even the Big Sur, not just Big Sur, but Mojave, Catalina. So yeah, that's a lot of it. Also been doing some cool stuff with a customer who had been a longtime user with the UCX and decided to upgrade. And instead of exchanging it, just change it, add on to the UCX with an ADI2 Pro FS. So I was helping them get that configured and working with optical connections. And man, he's just blown away by the huge improvement in the headphone monitoring and the audio performance. The UCX is no slouch, but ADI2 is just so special.
So how long did it take him to get up and running?
Oh, I don't know how long he spent, but once he got on the phone with me, we were up and running in 2 minutes. So,
Nice.
yeah, guys, don't beat your head against the wall. If you're having a problem, give us a call.
Yeah, and I have my video camera off right now because I'm pulling up our YouTube channel just so we can monitor questions as they're happening. So I
Yeah,
wasn't
please
quite prepared for that.
go ahead and shout out if you have anything. If you're following us on our YouTube or Facebook, I'm monitoring these. Got other people checking other platforms. I think what else? So there's some new stuff coming for the 12 mic. We're in do preliminary testing on a MIDI remote app that's looking really cool. So that's been on my wish list for a little while. Working with the AVB tool and the 12 mic.
Cool. Actually, I can get my camera back on. Sorry about that.
There we
Yeah, I
go.
love the 12 mic. I played around with it a lot. I think the mic pre's on it are amazing.
Hmm.
If it's a great expandable product, and if you haven't been on the RME website in a while, and you happen to be on any product page that is a audio interface, you might find something new there, which is our chat is new. And I actually maybe I'll pull that up on a browser so everybody can see. So let me share my screen and show you what I'm talking about. So if you're
Yeah.
on a RME audio interface page, let me get back to rmeusa.com and go to the audio interfaces under products or any of these interface products over here on the left. You will notice after about 3 to 5 seconds, a little pop up will come up in the bottom. And if you ignore it, that's fine. But it will ask you if you want help choosing an audio interface, and you can start asking questions. And the reason I even bring it up while Jeff was talking about the 12 mic is at the end of several of these Q&As, many times the solution is a combination of like a 12 mic and a Babyface USB or something.
Right.
There's diagrams and all kinds of great tools in there. So I will definitely encourage you to interact with that because you might be surprised all the different combinations of solutions that
Mhm.
RME can give you with those mic pre's and converters and audio interfaces.
Yeah, you can essentially put in the parameters for your dream interface or what you need fits your needs perfectly through the series of a handful of questions, and then at the end it'll tell you what products will work for you. It's pretty slick, and hopefully can help customers realize that there are more options than just a Fireface.
Yeah, I was actually trying to find the bundles page. Well, here's an example of a page that we're talking about here. So the Babyface Pro and an Octamic, just using the ADAT light pipe. So this is just one example of several that you'll run into of how our interfaces will expand to other inputs and outputs that you might need. And those bundles are spelled out here with the different components. And if you want to purchase them right off the website, you can, just as a matter of convenience. So several examples of that for sure.
Yeah, you even have the cable in there that you need for the connection. That's really clever.
Yeah, we try to make it easy for everyone, right? Nothing worse than buying something and go, oh, I need a cable that I don't have.
Time to run out to the store.
Exactly. So, well, I guess I'll sort of address the questions that I've been getting related to this software. Let me, once again, share my screen, except this time it'll be my desktop.
So this is one of the plugins that you get in the plug-in bundle with Fireface and Babyface.
Yep. So I have on the left here a Babyface Pro with Totalmix. And I have my Totalmix configuration. I got to move my Zoom window out of the way. I have the channels spread out. So if this looks a little different than what you normally see, normally these are together with 3/4 and AS1/2, but you can break them apart because I am using my instrument input for my guitar. And that's coming in input 3. And I'm using over here on the right the S-Gear software. So for those of you that don't know, when you buy an RME audio interface, a qualifying interface, it's not all of them, but it's most of them. Babyface, Fireface, for example, and you register it on our site, you will receive download instructions. One of those products that you will download is S-Gear. And when you install S-Gear, it'll do two things. It'll put the AU and VST side of it in your plugins folder if you already have one for any DAWs that you've recently installed. And it'll also put in your apps folder, your applications folder, a standalone version. So I'm using the standalone version, which means for you Macintosh users, you go to your Launchpad and you should see somewhere S-Gear. And this is what it looks like. And it's pretty simple to use. But before I jump into S-Gear, let me just remind everybody about the middle row of Totalmix. Now, if you don't have a middle row, you might be using Totalmix in the 2-row configuration. I'm a big 3-row person because I like to keep it separate in my head. Top row is my physical inputs. The middle row is my software sources. And the bottom row is my physical outputs. And the little names button just toggles between the headphones in the main and the actual phones 3/4 analog 1/2. So if anybody's looking at this and it doesn't look quite what you're used to, that might be some of the variations. And again, I like to separate the guitar. And over in S-Gear, it's pretty simple. You go to Preferences. When you open it up for the first time, it'll probably yell at you that you don't have an audio device setting. So you go to Preferences, and you should see the Babyface Pro as your device. I can choose the sample rate, which I'm running at 48K, and I can choose the buffer size. Word of caution, all software will give you some figure here. It isn't always accurate. I know Jeff can speak to that.
Yeah.
But, I have it set to 128 because for my playing, I don't feel a latency at all. Yeah. It's telling me I'm getting round trip latency of 6.9 milliseconds. I suspect that's not quite accurate, but that's okay.
Well, with running Zoom, that's definitely going to impact things. If you're just using the computer to play it, we were running it at the NAMM show, 2019 NAMM show, and it was great. Or I guess 2020, yeah. You can run a 32 sample buffer, 48 sample buffer. It feels like you're playing through a real amp at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm put it at 128. Audio routing. This is where every software is different. And this is where I lose a lot of customers. Because the software playback channels are labeled the same as the physical inputs. AN1, 2, 3, 4, etc. You might not see it that way in your routing area of your DAW, or in this case, S-Gear. Every software program I've noticed is a little different. But the input is input 3 on the Babyface. So when I bring up my guitar volume, in fact, let me mute the amp so you don't hear it. And when I bring it up, you can see it's coming in. And since I have that input 3 going to all of you, you're hearing my electric guitar dry. I don't really want that, so I'm going to bring that down for all of you. And I'm also going to bring it down for my headphone mix. So I'm not hearing my guitar. I see it right there, and I can see S-Gear is getting it. But how do I make the output of my amp show up in this middle row? I want it in a different place than my typical Mac sounds, because I might use iTunes for some backing tracks, and those backing tracks will show up here where I'm moving my mouse. So I'm going to choose the second set of channels, which is going to be 3, 4. So when I go back to here, my output is, these are my choices. 1, 2, output 1, output 2, 3, 4, etc. So if I were to put it in 5 and 6, just as an example, and I hit OK, now there it is on 5 and 6. And I can bring it up so all of you can hear it. And now I can hear it. So that is my software playback from just S-Gear. And now I could open up my DAW and route the mixer from that into this fader right here that I have muted. And so you can see that total mix middle row becomes super, super flexible when doing what I'm doing right now, which is maybe I just want to jam in my studio. I'm not really tracking right now, and I just need to get audio up. And if I wanted to get some, and I'll talk about S-Gear in more detail in a second, in terms of some of the cool things it has. But right now I'm on a preset that I have played around with. I'm not on the preset anymore. I've actually made it into something that sounds more like a Van Halen sound, which actually I will go find right now. I think it's user preset. I forgot where I put it.
So who's going to be, you're going to be Eddie. Who's going to be David Lee Roth? I think
exactly.
We might need to bring Marie in for that one.
Yeah, I think I'll just bring my delay down substantially here. And you have different delays here that I'm trying to get something.
All these presets are good starting points, but when you start tweaking it, that's when it really comes alive.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to small. Yeah. I want kind of a slap small room kind of sound. So you can kind of play around. All right, so getting back to Totalmix. See, I just did a little squirrel thing. Get my main out, which is feeding all of you with loopback. That's what's feeding Zoom right now. And bring up the guitar sound. I can even label this guitar or S-Gear. So you can kind of see how that all works. And I'm going to have my backing tracks right here, or my Mac sounds, or my Mac OS, or iTunes, or what have you. Yep. So I got kind of a Van Halen backing track that I can use, and just sort of get a decent mix. And let me play it and see what this sounds like. And if I don't like my mix, bring down my tracks a little bit. So that's pretty much how you can set up, just jamming in your studio, getting your tracks going in the background or from a DAW, but then using S-Gear at your gig. And then you have all your MIDI set up. So I have a MIDI pedal that I connect to this so I can move my presets up and down and all that kind of stuff. So the Totalmix side isn't that complicated, but I think it debuts the power of this software playback row and how you can utilize it just for playing, jamming, playing live, working on something in your studio. And I don't have to open up a DAW and run this as a plugin and add more latency, so pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very powerful. It allows you to do a lot of things. So like you can have multiple sources as you've seen there and adjust the balance between them so you can have a mix. It's not just everything's going at full blast. You can adjust on each output how the mix is done. So if somebody else is listening on another set of headphones and needs to hear a slightly different mix, that's not a problem at all.
Right. Now, getting around an S Gear, just to show you some basic stuff. So you got your rack here, and you can move things around in terms of signal flow. It starts with your amp, and you can right-click on this amp section, and you get your different amps that you can select. I'm banging through the presets right now. And, the actual amps are called, the Duke, Steeler, Jackal, Wayfarer, Custom 57. But, as I play with the amps, you can start to see what you're actually getting in terms of the type of amp. They're called something else, but anyone who's a guitar player is going to recognize some of these interfaces. Yeah. And frankly, some of the presets in here are pretty amazing. And one of the big things about an amp simulation product is how does a clean sound? Because anybody can get kind of a distortion that's passable for just about anything, but getting like a really nice sound that you're doing rhythm with. I'm still in that drop D tuning, but let me find, there's a couple of really nice clean sounds. And then you can add a device by right-clicking and bring up what you want. Or if you're going to do any kind of like if you're going to do that kind of stuff, it's very responsive. Now I'm playing a Luna guitar that's been customized, so if anyone's curious about the guitar, so you're not going to go find it at Luna Guitar's website anymore, but it's got some USA pickups, they're passive pickups, but very active, which is really nice. But, I think a good amp simulator can do rhythm as well as doing, the rock and roll stuff.
Yep.
But if you want to get into the rock stuff, there's some great, this is probably one of my favorite presets in this. Let me, and there's a built-in tuner. So let me get my guitar back to what I want before I go crazy. And if you're going to do some kind of... Or are you going to do some like... Or any kind of like lead, like if you're doing that Rush lead. It's very responsive amp sim. And in the middle, you have this little, where you pick your cabinets and you can mic them and you can choose, not only the kind of mic that you have, but where you want to put it on the cabinet. So if I start going to one of the Scuffum impulses, let's just say I take let's just do this 1x12. And now I can go in here and choose where the mic is on the cabinet and really kind of start playing around.
Wow, I didn't even know that was in there. That's awesome.
Yeah, so, and then you can put a rhythm mic. Now I'm using two cabinets in stereo, so it'd probably be a little more noticeable if I turn the second cabinet off. And now, as I play around with where I put that's a little closer to the cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't like that a little too distant, put it a little closer. Then add this, add the stereo to it. Turn this cabinet on and duplicate it. And then bring them in, and you can start playing around with the pans to get more of a stereo. Then down here on the bottom, you have your basic, amp A, amp B stuff. So you can switch between a rhythm and a lead if you want to do it kind of that way, like a traditional amp. And then your typical, audio volume and other controls. So again, didn't intend for this to be an S-Gear webinar or anything, but this is the software that comes with it. It's very powerful. It's probably normally $150. It's free of charge when you buy a Babyface or a Fireface, and it interfaces super well with a Fireface or a Babyface product. So that's kind of what we
sounds great in the headphones. So keeps your neighbors happy at night. And
yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Do you what about for bass players? Is there anything you think you could recommend there?
On the software front, no. I haven't played around with any bass amp sim stuff. S-Gear doesn't have any current plans for that. I have asked that a couple of times.
Yeah, but you can still load up like a Tweed on there and play a bass.
Yeah, you can play around with, like, if you go. Let me share my screen again. Obviously, you wouldn't use some of these amps that are very distortive in nature, but you could go to a more simple amp.
Yeah.
And then get rid of some of the effects, but you can add things and then use on your input side over here. If I was using a bass, first of all, you have a -10 +4 setting, and it will auto sense if it's a high Z input, and you can play around with the gains. I try to keep, between looking at this meter and looking at my actual Babyface itself, I can kind of get a feel for hot my input is. If I want to use DigiCheck and really keep it from distorting, I can do that too. But yeah, with the bass, it works very well. I mean, I've used the Babyface with a bass guitar, but I've never tried it with S-Gear. I have an active Ibanez bass that's really got some good pickups in it, and I've been able to get some really good sounds.
You probably don't even really need a sim with that. Huh?
Well, I'm a big Ampeg
Yeah.
bass amp guy, and I still prefer the sound of a bass amp for getting really legitimate bass sounds. But when I have to just lay a track down just to get something and I go direct, the Babyface works really well for me.
Yeah, it does. Those high Z inputs work really, really nicely on that.
What other questions do you get these days?
Oh, well, just a lot of product questions. What are we, people are looking for something new. That's what it comes down to. Either they've been having problems with something, or it's been too long. They're ready for an upgrade. So, with everything that's been going on, I don't really want to get into the whole market and, shortages stuff that's going on. It's been rough, but, we have products. So, the Firefaces are a little bit limited at the moment, but, just trying to help people figure out what's going to work for them. I've been building a lot of systems around RME interface with Ferrofish converters for people.
Yep.
Which is a really nice pairing. You can add a Ferrofish Pulse 16 or A32 to some of the RME, pure digital interfaces, or expand on a Fireface with those. And that makes for a really nice partner and good price point.
Well, since you're mentioning that, let me share all the diagrams that we recently did for customers, which includes some of what you just described. But it kind of, again, just sort of reinforces this idea of all these different ways RME gear can be used. This is in no particular order. I know you were talking about the A32 with the Fireface, but these are some of our sound cards using, with our converters and mic pre's. And
so that's the ADI-8, which is
the ADI-8 to give you more
D to A.
Yeah, give you more analog inputs with a PCI Express route. Here's the one we showed earlier. This is with an Octamic 2. Here's the 12 mic with an AVB connection direct into the Digiface AVB. You don't need a switch for this simple setup. Here's a situation of using our BNC MADI ports on a Digiface. This could just as easily be a MADIface USB or your Fireface UFX Plus, where we're getting 24 mic inputs into an audio interface by RME and managing it all in Totalmix. And there's with AVB using a switch because we got more than 2 devices. And then getting to the more common stuff that the home studio folks are into. Here's a Digiface USB, probably one of our most affordable solutions for a 32 in, 32 out audio interface connected via ADAT light pipe to our 12 mic, which would be a pretty cool setup right there.
Yeah.
And
very cool.
UCX, I think this is
the Fireface UC with a Octamic.
Yep, with an Octamic and a UCX, and now we're getting into the Fireface stuff. So here's a UFX2. No, UFX.
Yeah, UFX2.
Yeah, UFX2. I got to look at it twice. Maddie on there, and just more of the same depending on what it is you're trying to do. Is there 802 using ADAT, and there's just lots of different ways. I know there's a couple of Ferrofish examples in this somewhere. I don't think we've, now we're getting into all the MADI cards or the different MADI cards that we have, using it with some external gear, connecting it via MADI. It's important to note that our MADI products generally have both optical MADI and BNC. Most of these diagrams, we chose to show it with the BNC because you didn't have to buy the SFP module to do it. Here we go. So Pulse 16 from Ferrofish, this is kind of what Jeff was talking about. He was referring to the A32, but this is a great way to add on more input for keyboard players and folks that have a lot of analog gear. This is a great solution.
And we've been trying to get the word out. Ferrofish has just released some new updates for the Pulse series where they have variants that can do signal levels up to plus 24 dBu, which is really important for anyone using that in a broadcast truck or production facility. And they've done another one that removes all the DC blocking, and that allows us to send out DC signals for CV gate. So CV gate is like kind of an old school early synthesizer technology that is instead of MIDI, you're using voltage on the output of a converter to send control, and that will control pitch or volume, a lot of things like that. You get that sort of Doctor Who synthesizer phasing and all those kind of things. It's really cool effects, and the modular synth has become so popular in the last few years. I'm glad we really have something to show people, something to provide for our customers to get them into that. Really amazing, and really not too much additional cost for these modifications. So a great deal.
Yep. And if you go to the ferrofishusa.com website, this is where it'll kind of walk you through that these are now available. And then if you go up here, you'll see the different options of Pulse 16s, because that's the series that has this control voltage capability. So
yeah, it's really neat. If you've heard like the Stranger Things song, that's what the kind of thing I'm talking about.
I'm seeing some questions. I just thought I'd look, showing my age because I can't read.
Yeah. Well, nothing on YouTube that I'm seeing here.
I've been really impressed by SGear so far. It's a great sounding sim. Bought my UFX Plus. RME was cool and gave it to me. Brainworks Master Desk is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
That's a headphone out. All right, here we go. Besides the headphone out display remote and AK4493 versus 4490, is the circuit topology of the ADS 82FS equivalent to the Pro RBE?
Yes. The only thing that's really different, is like you said, the screen, and it doesn't have any of the DSP stuff in the FS. The FS is just a standalone converter. ADI2-FS is what we're talking about here.
Unless he was asking about the ADI2 DAC, he might not have typed DAC in the
So basically the idea is they're all built on the same board design. The Pro and the DAC have added features, and because the ADI2FS is just a standalone converter, it can only support up to 192K sample rate, only 192K, which really, you probably don't need in a normal studio. But that's the limitation of the SPDIF connection that you're using. With the other ones with USB, you can actually go up to 384 kilohertz or 768 kilohertz, which is part of the sort of laboratory side of things of measurements and that kind of thing. But it also works well for dealing with high res audio, DSD, and converting that to PCM.
Yeah, he was
So,
he just to be clear, he was specifying the ADI2 FS.
right.
So he was asking about the chips and
Yep. ADI2 Pro came first, and then they sort of cut away everything that wasn't a converter, and you ended up with the ADI2 FS.
great. Marie, do we have any questions on any other of our platforms? I've been monitoring YouTube. I know we have somebody at the other ones, but didn't know if we had any other questions.
Quiet today.
All right. Well, if you have more questions, feel free to send them in. If you go to rmeusa.com and click on support, you can put your questions right in that form, and we will be sure to get them answered. So we want to thank everyone for being here, and everyone have a safe and wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Take care.